Looking for something more? New River Community College can help you find it, whether you're just getting started or starting over.
I wanted something more for my future, and New River Community College gave me that chance.
Students can complete their first 2 years at the community college, and then they can complete their junior and senior year courses with ODU. So the tagline plus ODU, you start at the Virginia Community College, and then a seamless transfer to Old Dominion University online.
We literally can take a student here from the very first college course all the way to a PhD.
The articulation agreements that we have with ODU make it really easy for students to transfer.
And we have staff in place that will help our students make that transition.
So I basically jumped right in and then finished a year and a half later and received my bachelor's degree.
It lowers the risk, it lowers the barriers.
It's very important for us to understand the student and to make sure that ODU Online is a good fit for them, because we want them to graduate.
I did it, Mom!
By taking your first 2 years at the community college, the tuition is at that community college rate.
Not only does it save money, but I would say it does help guide students into what they want to do.
Advising and mentoring and information for our students really from day one.
I don't think I would have been able to finish school without ODU Online. And the reason why is it's convenient.
You can go there and visit. They're welcome to participate in a variety of activities.
A lot of classes were asynchronous, and I could do them at my own time in a given period of time.
So we're able to offer them an education right where they are.
It's challenging, but it can be done, and I graduated. So if I graduated, I think a lot of people can graduate.
G3 Assistance through Virginia's community colleges is your pathway to a new future. Students living in Virginia who qualify for state financial aid with a family income that's less than $100,000 qualify for funding. G3 is available for select programs in 5 of Virginia's most in-demand industries. You can learn skills and earn certifications for information technology jobs like cybersecurity, healthcare, public safety jobs including law enforcement and corrections, early childhood education, and skilled trades work like construction or manufacturing. G3 can help those who qualify pay for school, allowing you to train for the right career, right where you are, right now. You can learn more at virginiag3.com. Get a skill, get a job, get ahead.
I would say that ACE is like a big family.
It's a give and take situation.
I feel like it'll give me a better start.
And you want to do good and make good grades.
I won't have $50,000 student loans to pay off.
The ACE program has impacted me by giving me like my first steps into college.
It also is a chance to give back to the community and people who have brought you up since you were small.
When they told me about it, I was like, dang, community service? But after doing it, it's actually brought me like happiness to see how I can help out where I'm at in life.
You really impacted my life.
That taught me patience, definitely.
I've volunteered at my high school's cafeteria in our summer lunch program.
Coaching football for Floyd.
The main place I did community service was at McCarg Elementary School.
The Wind Lab provides some of the vegetables for the summer lunch program. A lot of people actually go there, like the football team, and it just feels good to do stuff for your community.
I want to have my own TV show.
I want to be a dermatologist.
I just like to coach at Floyd.
I've always wanted to be able to help people.
You know, everybody becomes like a big family and you want to do good and stay local, you know, because I don't want to leave away from here. I love it here, so.
My name is Lawrence Edward Robinson Jr.
Kevin Langley.
Monty Head.
Kaylee Wilson.
Dalton Crockett.
AJ Miller.
Mike Watson.
I graduated New River Community College in 1974.
87.
2019.
I'm a freshman here at New River, and I'm currently in the instrumentation program.
Thought about four-year school, thought about military, and ultimately my father was able to talk me into going to New River because of the immediate opportunity to have work out of school.
I had a friend that was in the instrumentation program, and he told me a little bit about it, and I decided to come over here and check it out, and decided it was something I wanted to do.
You might ask, why would you want to enter into an instrumentation program at New River? Well, I can guarantee you, on the outside world, if you go in as a technician, there will be no boredom. Being involved in the instrumentation program, I've learned to be a better listener and definitely a problem solver.
Being at New River really improved my social skills, working with people. My dad actually went to this school 25 years ago and got an instrumentation degree, and he told me about it and encouraged me to come here.
The instrumentation program at New River Community College is a two-year program. That's a very interesting program. If you like physics, science, you like how things work and all, it's the great program to go into. You have an option to go to work almost anywhere in the world. People don't realize that. It's not just Virginia. Instrumentation is worldwide. It's a career that's very in demand. It's only going to get more and more in demand. So you can take this two-year degree and go anywhere in the world.
Parents, are you wondering whether to send your son or daughter to New River College Instrumentation Program? I highly recommend that. It is a very rewarding career and high paying.
My name is Mike Morgan. I'm a manager of electrical engineering at ESS Technologies, and we hire students from New River Community College's instrumentation program. Demand for instrumentation nationwide is growing. More and more factories are automating their systems and their lines, and the skill sets that you learn from instrumentations are all in high demand. These factories need people to be able to work on the systems and to support that. New River students are going to be in high demand for any factory that produces equipment such as we do that would be hiring as well.
If you're looking for something that your son or daughter could excel in, this is a wonderful field to take a look at, and the program at New River is unmatched as far as anything I've seen.
I like New River because the classrooms are smaller and you get to communicate with your fellow students.
The faculty of the instrumentation program are excellent. Monty Fleshman and Keith McAllister want to see you succeed, so they're involved with the companies that hire the graduates, so they give the graduates exactly the knowledge they need to be successful in the workplace.
The house we're sitting in was built between 1772 and 1774. And where we're sitting in Blacksburg, Virginia, really is kind of the furthest west you see this type of architecture. And the reason why it exists is because there was an immigrant who came from Northern Ireland, but he came over here following in the path of his uncle, James Patton, who was part of the Draper's Meadow community, the first settlement in this area. Some people will say that this is the best example of colonial architecture west of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and really it is. When they built the house, there were just log structures around. That's about it. I mean, this house made a huge, huge statement to anybody who came here. You know, right now, we are sitting in the drawing room of the house. And the drawing room, if you were a guest to the Preston family, this is where you would come, where you would sit, where you'd be entertained. This is a room where there would be enslaved people waiting on you if you're a white guest. This is also a room, very likely, that the enslaved community was divided up at least 4 times when the property was divided up. So this room has a lot of history. You're able to go upstairs if you were to visit us, and right up above us is a bedroom where girls would have stayed. So if you were a guest and you brought children with you, they would have stayed upstairs with the Preston children. Girls on this side and boys just a little bit down the hall, and in between is a little landing. And we have it set up to resemble what it might have looked like when an enslaved woman slept up there. We also have a main chamber on this floor. The main chamber is where Susanna Smith Preston and William Preston would have stayed. And if you were an adult visiting here, You would have stayed in that room too. We've got 2 beds in there. We also have a dining room, and we have a school room too. The school room served as the first school in this region. It's important too to remember that William wasn't responsible for doing all the work here in this house. There were, between 1774 and 1865, at the end of slavery, there were roughly 216 enslaved people who lived here, some of whom died here. And the enslaved people were the hands that built this house. So when you walk through the house and you see tool marks downstairs in the floor joists, those tool marks were likely laid by enslaved labor here. So there were carpenters, there were masons, there were all of these people who were trained to do really complex tasks. So William had the vision, he had the idea. It was really executed by enslaved labor. The New River Valley, to me, I think, especially as somebody who had ancestors travel through this area, is a really special place, and I think it's really special to people who grow up here, and it's really special for people who decide to make it their home, coming from somewhere else. And I think it's because of the tremendous natural beauty that's here, but also the really rich history that's here too. It's easy, I think, sometimes for people to think of cultural attractions and think of Eastern Virginia and forget about Southwestern Virginia, including the New River Valley. But when people come through here and they're captivated by the mountains, this sort of valley between the Appalachian Plateau and the Blue Ridge Mountains, they're really looking at a place where, for thousands of years, people saw it as a good place to live, a good place to be. We need places like Smithfield to serve as reminders of what happened and help people, I think, gain better perspective for the world that they're seeing now and hopefully imagine a better world.
Hi, my name is Haley Taylor, and I'm the youngest member of the Calfee Community and Cultural Center Board of Directors. Part of the reason that I joined the CCCC is because I really wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself. I was really interested in the board, not only because my grandmother went to Calfee, but she herself has also been on several boards. So I was like, you know, it seems pretty cool to do the same things that my grandma did when I was 5 and 6 and 7. When I was an intern, we talked mainly about why Calfee started and how it was born out of segregation, but it progressed and it became something that was so much more. I think a lot of alum described it as a second family. So it was just really interesting to see that and to also learn about the history that I've never heard of. Like, I'd heard about Thurgood Marshall, but I had no clue that he was in Pulaski. Chauncey Harmon had actually corresponded with Thurgood Marshall in an attempt to create a lawsuit for equal funding with all Black students in the county. Chauncey Depew Harmon was appointed principal of Calfee Training School, and he himself was actually a native of Pulaski. In 1949, the struggle continued, and Black parents won their lawsuit against the Pulaski County School Board, which was ordered to give Black students improved facilities. This is one of 6 cases won by Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP that led up to the Brown versus Board of Education. Normally when people think of Black history, they think Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, slavery, it's kind of it. So I think people just need to be more aware of it, and it was just really nice to be part of something that brought it to light and revitalized the history of that. The goal of the CCCC is to raise funding in order to preserve the building and its history by providing the community with a museum, a community kitchen, a child care center, a digital learning lab, and an event and office space.
I'm Marilyn Harmon, and I'm delighted to know that Calfee School is going to be initiating a museum, but this museum will allow people, not only in Pulaski, but Southwest Virginia, to know the contributions that were made in order to push education through this area.
I attended Calfee Training School, grades 1 through 7. One of my fondest memories was enjoying the delicious cornbread prepared by our cook, and she was always doing very nice things. For that reason, we decided to name our commercial kitchen the Lena Huckstep Community Kitchen. This kitchen will prepare hot meals for the children that attend our child care center. It will also be utilized by local partners like Beans and Rice and the Daily Bread.
I'm here to introduce the Dorothy D. Berry Venable Learning Lab. This will be a digital learning lab that'll help teach the youth of tomorrow transferable skills to help them in job preparation as well as get them some general life experience. As the communications coordinator for the CCCC, I've personally invested in this project.
The rich history of Calfee and the great need in Pulaski County for quality child care has been an inspiration to form the Lucy and Chauncey Harmon Learning Center. The Learning Center will serve approximately 100 infants, toddlers, and preschool-age children, and will also be a model of community collaboration among early childhood organizations.
The Calfee Community and Cultural Center will house the Broadnoe Baker Event Hall, which is named for 2 of Calfee's former band directors. A boardroom, gallery, and small rental office will also be available to community members and small businesses.
The Calfee Cultural and Community Center is going to meet educational, child care, nutritional, and other needs of our community that currently aren't being fully met. I'm very proud to be a member of the board.
Hearing Dr. Harmon teach me the history of this school, and it's not just Pulaski history, it's national history that I did not know, and neither did anyone else in my circle or in our schools or anywhere. So it's such an important story, and it needs to be told.
I think how we understand history shapes how we believe and act in the present, and so I think it's important that we work to help all of our community members and neighbors understand this history.
I wish that my teachers knew to tell me that these men had a connection to Pulaski County, and I hope in the future that second graders will be able to go to the Calfee Training School Museum to learn about these things and more.
I'm also very excited about the daycare center that's going to be in operation for the community to be able to come to. So I'm looking forward and been a very big part of this school and can't wait to see it open.
Thank you so much for your time. If you would like to help us make this dream a reality, please contact us to find out more ways that you can contribute.
Looking for something more? New River Community College can help you find it, whether you're just getting started or starting over.
I wanted something more for my future, and New River Community College gave me that chance.
G3 Assistance through Virginia's community colleges is your pathway to a new future. Students living in Virginia who qualify for state financial aid with a family income that's less than $100,000 qualify for funding. G3 is available for select programs in 5 of Virginia's most in-demand industries. You can learn skills and earn certifications for information technology jobs like cybersecurity, healthcare, public safety jobs including law enforcement and corrections, early childhood education, and skilled trades work like construction or manufacturing. G3 can help those who qualify pay for school, allowing you to train for the right career, right where you are, right now. You can learn more at virginiag3.com. Get a skill, get a job, get ahead.
My name's Ted Farmer, and I teach history at New River Community College, and I have been a baseball fan since October 9th, 1973. I became a baseball historian by default through memorizing the backs of my baseball card collection, particularly the statistics. But I think it was the sportscaster Bryant Gumbel that said, all other sports are just sports. Baseball is a love. And to a lot of people that might seem like overblown hyperbole, but for me, it's definitely true. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Baseball is enjoyable to play physically. It's aesthetically beautiful to watch. And it is multifaceted in terms of its uniqueness. And I can give a lot of examples of that, but several that just come to mind right off. The playing field. Most playing fields in terms of sports are rectangular. The baseball field is a diamond. Most action takes place on a diamond. The defense has the ball. That's unique to baseball. There's no clock, and there's really no uniformity in terms of the field itself. All parts are different in terms of the length between the home plate and the fences and things such as that. So it's a very unique sport, and as a historian, it is a gold mine, and that's my primary interest in baseball. Has been for a long time, particularly the statistical aspect of it. But the history of the game goes back really for the better part of 175 years in this country. It's been a major part of baseball culture for almost 200 years now. The transformation from a child's game to an adult's game, a major business, began really in the 1840s. And not coincidentally, it started about the time period where the Industrial Revolution in the United States was really taking full effect. And right after the Industrial Revolution took full effect, you had something known as the Leisure Revolution in this country. And the Leisure Revolution is an aspect of American history that isn't nearly as well studied as it should be in most history classes, but baseball fits right into there. And it's not, as I said, it's not a coincidence, because urban people needed an outlet, primarily for exercise purposes, for competitive purposes. And the poet Walt Whitman said, it will get our people outdoors, it will fill them with oxygen, and it will give them a larger physical stoicism. One of the great quotes about baseball in the mid-19th century. And so from a historical perspective, it really begins to be an important part of the history of this country around the 1860 to 1869 period, where you have the first professional players emerging. It's really unfortunate that a lot of people, particularly young people, feel that baseball is somehow outdated or old-timey, as some people like to say, and has lost a lot of its relevance. And unfortunately and ironically, I think one of the reasons for that is the fact that in terms of historical documentation, no sport has done a better job of documenting its history than American baseball. I would estimate that more books and articles have been written about baseball than all other sports played in America combined. Every pitch since 1876, with the birth of what we know as Major League Baseball, has been recorded. And so there's just such a wealth of information there. And people that really love the sport have a tendency to look back in any situation that they find themselves in, look back and do comparisons and talk about some sort of historical aspect. It happened to me just yesterday. I was at one of my son's high school games. His teammate was a left-handed pitcher warming up. A gentleman sitting to my right immediately said, well, he looks pretty good, but he's no Warren Spahn. Warren Spahn was a pitcher that pitched in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Before long, the discussion in the area started reverting back even further to people like Walter Johnson, who made his debut in 1908. And you could see that the young people in the crowd were completely lost. And I really think that that's one thing that unfortunately turns young people against baseball. And they think it's something that happened, 300, 400 years ago, when they hear a lot of older people talking about things that they've never heard of, they've never encountered individuals that they have no knowledge of. And that's too bad. It really is, because the history of the game is so rich. And like I say, as a historian, it just makes my life so much better if I can talk baseball history on a daily basis with anybody. And young people these days, I would say by a ratio of 3 or 4 or even 5 to 1, prefer football. And there are a lot of reasons for that as well. Baseball has been known as the national pastime since the emergence of the first professional teams in 1869. However, we live in a society that is unfortunately fast-paced, it's violent, and football, as we all know, is a little more fast-paced in the action. It's much more violent, and I'm still amazed and shocked when I asked young people, or people of any age, why do you prefer football over baseball? And one of the primary reasons that they inevitably offer is they like to see people getting bashed on the field, getting laid out, that kind of thing. They prefer two people colliding rather than a ball and a bat, which I think is unfortunate, but there's no question in my mind that baseball is a dying sport in America, and it really pains me to say that, but there was an article in Sports Illustrated a few years ago, and some of the more pessimistic commentators in that article had an expiration date of 2050. There will be no more Major League Baseball, there will be no more minor league baseball, any baseball of any kind, in their estimation, if it keeps dying at this rate by 2050. Just the opposite's true with football. It gets a little bit more popular in terms of viewership every year. I think this past Super Bowl was the most watched Super Bowl in history. And I don't see how that's going to turn around, certainly not in my lifetime. But football is the new American pastime or national pastime, without a doubt. One of the great myths about baseball is that it hasn't changed much since the beginning of the game, which in certain ways goes back to about 1845, when the New York Knickerbockers sat down with the first 20 rules. But baseball has been changing and modifying itself almost from day one. A lot of people think that if you had people that played the game or watched the game from the 1880s or 1890s, that they could attend a Major League game today and recognize the game immediately. Well, sure, they would know that it's baseball, but with almost no exceptions, everything has changed about the game. The only two things that I can think of right off the top of my head that haven't changed would be the distance between the bases at 90 feet and the width of the plate at 17 inches. All the equipment, the uniforms, the size of the players, the size of the parks, so many of the rules, just about everything about baseball has changed. So it's one of the great myths that the game has this continuity. One of my favorite aspects of baseball are the differences in the parks, and going to each park that I possibly can attend a game at. It has been really a great joy in my life for about the last 30 years. One of my bucket list items is going to Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts, which is the oldest park still in use. It goes back to April 1912. I'll be there about a month from now, ironically, and I can't wait to get there. Another one of the parks I really want to visit is Wrigley Field in Chicago, which goes back to 1914. As we speak today, there are only 3 parks that are in existence from before I was born, and I was born in 1966, and Dodger Stadium emerged in 1962, I believe. So there are only 3 that I would consider old, being defined as before I was born. And so The most unique park by most accounts is Fenway Park. The configuration of the park with the left field wall known as the Green Monster, 38 feet high, and all sorts of quirky little things that go back, for the most part, to the very beginning when the park opened in April of 1912. But Wrigley Field is another great park that I would encourage anybody to visit. I have not, unfortunately, but that's another one on my bucket list. There's ivy covering the outfield fences, and the park is really unique in a lot of ways as well. I think of the modern parks, in other words, the parks that have been built since the 1970s, the most noteworthy I can think of would be Oriole Park at Camden Yards in Baltimore. It's personally, at this point, my favorite park and the very first park that I ever visited myself back in the 1990s when it first opened. When you walk into the grounds, you literally have a feeling, or at least I have, and I've talked to others that have expressed the same sentiment, that you've gone back in time, because beyond the right field fence, there's this huge B&O railroad warehouse that dates back to the early part of the 20th century. And that sort of dominates the ambiance of the entire park. So that's one that's really unique that I would encourage people to visit. There are others, of course, but many of them I don't have any firsthand experience with, but certainly Fenway and Wrigley would be near the top of that list as well. Since the amateur era began in baseball in the 1840s, it has provided a vehicle for literally millions of people to improve their personal socioeconomic lot in this life. I think it was Joe DiMaggio that said, no rich kid will ever make it to the major leagues. And until the emergence of a guy named Mike Piazza, whose father owned a series of car dealerships in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Joe DiMaggio was right in that prediction. It has been a not so quick and very difficult route to fame and fortune in this country. The best example of that is also the best player of all time, a man named George Herman Babe Ruth, who grew up in an orphanage. He had been dropped off by his parents at the age of 7 in 1902 in Baltimore, Maryland, and came out of the orphanage at 18 years old, and within about 3 or 4 years became one of the most famous people in the United States, and to this day is one of the most famous and impactful people in the entire 20th century of American history. Ruth served as sort of a good example of how, from the worst circumstances possible, you could make it in this country and achieve all sorts of success by anybody's measure. Unfortunately, before the emergence of Jackie Robinson on the major league level in 1947, the game at the major league level was restricted to white or Latino players only. I would say that the most important person in terms of civil rights in the history of the country is a baseball player, Jackie Robinson. Ruth and Robinson are by far the most important players in the history of the game, and Robinson is bigger than the game because he really did do more than anybody in this country to desegregate the country. Baseball is not unique in terms of being a vehicle for poor, disadvantaged kids to make it in this country. It might actually be the most frustrating because it's the hardest sport to play by most people's estimation. I really can't overestimate, despite all of its past infamies in terms of scandals and injustice, the color barrier that kept Black Americans out of the game for the better part of a century. I can't overemphasize the greatness of the sport and the importance of the sport. And I refer back to this great book titled What Baseball Means to Me. I really encourage everybody that's interested, not just in baseball, but in American life in general, to read that book. And a man named George Herbert Walker Bush has one of the entries in that book. And he talks about how his family actually marks milestones in their lives by baseball memories that they have encountered over generations and over the years. You're talking about a man here who became President of the United States, met all sorts of impactful, significant, and great people from around the world, and yet to his dying day, he claimed that his all-time hero was Lou Gehrig, a baseball player, first baseman for the Yankees. This sport's powerful stuff.